Bueno, tengo el honor y el gusto de, porque es un auténtico privilegio para la Escuela de Madrid, recibir al profesor Karl Steiner, uno de los más importantes especialistas en paisaje y con una contribución a lo largo de toda su carrera especialmente importante. Karl Steiner es profesor de Arquitectura del Paisaje y Planeamiento en la Harvard Graduate School of Design desde 1973. Fue el primer profesor en ser nombrado con la categoría de Alexander and Victoria Willy, también de la misma universidad, en 1986. Obtuvo el título de doctor en Planeamiento Urbano y Territorial con un Major en Diseño Urbano en el Instituto Tecnológico de Massachusetts en 1967. El profesor Steinitz ha dedicado gran parte de su carrera profesional y académica a mejorar los procesos de toma de decisiones, tanto de arquitectos como de urbanistas, que se enfrentan a grandes áreas territoriales en rápidos procesos de mutación. Sus clases engloban cursos que incluyen teoría y método del planeamiento del paisaje y análisis y gestión del paisaje virtual. Ha dirigido estudios en la región de Garrison, en Colorado, en la región de Monadnock, en New Hampshire. Bueno, es que es impresionante el currículum que tiene, hasta trabajos realizados en China, en Panamá, en La Paz, en la Baja California, México. Desde 1966, el profesor Steinitz recibe el premio anual Outstanding Practitioner Award de la International Society of Landscape Ecology. En 2002 fue nombrado profesor destacado de la Harvard University. Es el principal autor de Alternative Futures for Changing Landscape Island Express. Él me ha dado un último dato que quería que diera, que fue el primer estudiante de Kevin Lynch que se graduó. Muchas gracias.
Yes? First, let me thank the organizing committee for inviting me. For the last 2 years, my students have been working in Spain, in Castilla-La Mancha and in the Tahoe River. And I've come to know Madrid and like it. So I'm very happy to come here, have a good conference, have a very pleasant dinner, and then go back. I wondered about that. Just do whatever you need to. I pressed it. Fine, much better. So thank you for having me. I need to make 2 introductions to my talk, which will be in 2 parts. One introduction is that I have organized landscape planning studies in many countries in very different societies. And the way that a society sees the process of organizing change makes a fundamental difference to the methods that it uses to even think about cultural landscape. In China, it's done by directive from the top. In much of Europe, it's done by a belief, but not a practice, of normative planning. The European model basically is defensive of the cultural landscape. And it basically says to a developer, you can do what the plan says, and also you can't do what the plan says you can't do. That's the simple model. America has a different model. We have a model that says you can do whatever you want with your private property unless there is a public purpose that you shouldn't. It's a very different model. And then there are the majority of countries which have no planning model at all and absolutely operate on a market anarchy. And the question of where you are in this position really matters. It really matters. The second introduction is I also come from a professional culture which begins in a school of architecture. And schools of architecture think as a caricature, that if you can design something, you can design anything. And working at a territorial landscape, in my opinion and in my experience, is very different from what is taught and done by most architects. And for the School of Architecture here, or in my university, or in Firenze, or in Peking, to believe that it can undertake a serious professional study in landscape planning inclusive of the cultural landscape is probably wrong. Your speaker previously made this point. And I want to reinforce it in my second part of my talk by showing you a case study and showing you the 15 professionals who had to collaborate in one model to do it. My school only has 3 of these 15 people on its faculty. How could we do this? My talk will be in 2 parts. The first has to do with the context in which looking at the cultural landscape takes place. In my view, in my experience, the cultural landscape sometimes is very, very important. It's sometimes the central part of making a landscape plan. Sometimes it's not that important. It's not important equally everywhere, which is one of the difficult things when you have a normative plan. I want to talk about, first, the problem of scale. Galileo is right. Many devices, many methods, many processes, many ideas which work at one scale simply don't work at another scale. And then I'm going to show in my second half a case study in Mexico, of the capital city of Baja California Sur. A study which had to be done in 4 months, making a territorial plan based on the landscape and how the city would grow. Scale matters. In my school, which has architects, landscape architects, which, by the way, are recognizably different in America than in Spain, planners, urban designers, most students start here and go this way and more or less end here. And the kinds of problems dealing with the landscape, well, put a building on a difficult site. Design a garden. And you do this immediately. And then maybe you'll design a town in a difficult ecology or an urban park. And most people who think about the landscape stop here. They stop at the project scale. They stop at the scale where the assumption is that you have a client, a site, and a program. And very few students, the ones who work with me in particular, they start thinking about regional urbanization and regional conservation. Now, there's a whole group of people in the world who think in the other direction. Not this way, but this way. Geographers, engineers, cultural historians. They look at the big picture and try to, hydrologists, geologists, ecologists. They look at the big picture, political scientists, bankers. And they go this way, and they almost never get to this side. And the question is, what's the training and what's the lens through which you're going to look at the problem? I'm interested in this scale. I've spent a long time working at the territorial scale, and sometimes I go to this scale. But I did this 40 years ago, and I don't do it anymore. So I think of the problem in this direction, not in this direction. And a wise school does both. They have some things that go this way and some things that go this way. There are real differences at the extremes of these 2 scales. This scale, if you make a mistake, decide something badly, you have a very high risk. The concept of risk dominates working at this scale. You want to minimize it. Why? Because this is big, it has lots of people, lots of money, lots of change, and the decisions are serious. As you go to this scale, the risk goes down. I don't care if my neighbor has a modern house or a Baroque house. What's the risk? I do care if I don't have water. That's a risk. The decision, however, the focus of decision changes also. This scale, you're really dealing with strategy. This scale, in the middle, you're dealing with tactics. And this scale, you're really dealing with details. It matters, the details. You have a vertical garden here in Madrid. The plants will not last for more than 1 year. The details matter. All right? That is not even a question at the scale of the growth of Madrid. At this scale, you have a high reliance on science. You must have a high reliance on science. And you have a much more complicated formal strategy. The idea that you can make a simple diagram like this and really see it on the ground is foolish. It doesn't work. At this scale, however, you have enormously more public understanding. People understand their house, they understand their neighborhood, they don't understand their city, and they surely don't understand their province. So there's a difference between experts and popular decision making. A necessary difference. So the decisions in a plan at this scale are really related to risk, to minimizing social risk, economic risk, ecological risk, hydrological risk, etc. It's essentially defensive. Whereas at the smaller size, it really is more related to decentralized decision making. Different architects, different neighborhoods, different clients, all coming together. Again, here, the process emphasis, the emphasis of the methodology. And by the way, there is no one methodology. That's a crazy idea. There are hundreds of methods. Putting them together is the problem. The emphasis in a process at this scale is allocation, deciding what goes where. The emphasis at this scale is organization, how they relate to each other. The emphasis at this scale is expression. What does it look like? What does it feel like? These are very different. As the spatial precision gets smaller, you have more of a demand-based offensive strategy. What I mean by that is, a client says, I want something, you happen to agree, and you do it. It's based on demand. It's based on the push of the market. At this scale, it's more supply-based and defensive. You do have to understand the landscape. You do have to define the cultural values. You do have to establish priorities. And then you do have to defend them. At this scale, you get famous for making new changes. At this scale, you get famous or not for protecting old landscapes. That's very different. A very good metaphor, or analogy, it's an analogy, is to the first law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics. Energy can be converted to light or heat or any combination. Energy is cost, time, research, people, experts. Light means knowledge. Heat means excitement. There's nothing exciting here. There's a lot exciting here. As a result, these decisions are really made by experts, models, and elected people and unelected people. Elected people are the people who you vote for your government. Unelected people are the heads of banks. They make those decisions, and they make them by expert models. They don't make them by popular vote. Whereas here, everybody makes decisions individually. It's totally decentralized. And somewhere in between, there's a cross, and it's probably at the municipal level. But at the supra-municipal level, at the level of territory, it's not done by popular referendum, except maybe in Switzerland. Another complication. There are fundamentally two ways to make a design. Two. Here's the past, more past, and here we are. This is today. The first wave is basically anticipatory and deductive. You're sitting in the middle of the night at the table, and you have an idea. And you go and you see the future. You see the future. And then you have to figure out how to get there. Every architect has this many times. You've thought about the problem, and you see the solution. And then you have to figure out how you get there. And you almost always fail. It's hard. The other way is exploratory and inductive. You basically put together a set of choices. And you say, I could do this, 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 or this. Let's suppose I do this. I can do this, this, or this. Let's suppose I do this, this one. Or maybe I should have gone this way. And a typical design or plan might have 50 to 100 decisions. And if you could make 50 to 100 correct decisions, you should be in Las Vegas. And you almost always fail. You almost always fail in this approach also. And that's why sometimes you say, I've done enough. I don't care what color the carpet is. That's normal. At this scale, this deductive technique is absolutely appropriate. We've seen huge numbers of experiences. The history of architecture and the history of landscape architecture is full of these. The idea, let's make a white garden, right? Let's make a round building. Those are these kinds of inspirations. But at this scale, this approach is better. Why? Because if you make the wrong decision in the beginning, you have a very high risk. An alternative future is what happens as the result of a scenario. And a scenario is a set of assumptions. It's the list of assumptions and policies that get you to the future. All right? That's a scenario. In making a landscape plan, you have 4 fundamental considerations. 4. One of them is history. If you don't know the history of the place, and by the way, the history of the plans for the place, I have never in my life worked in a place that didn't already have a plan. And these people aren't stupid, the people in the past. All right? So you need to look at that. The next thing are facts. Facts are things that do not change in the life of your own plan and your own study. I might work for 20 years or 30 years in the future. And the geology isn't going to change. So the subsurface geology I would call a fact. Tell it to me, I'm not going to worry. Then there are constants. Those are very difficult. The constants are the things that are going to happen during the course of your plan, and you had better find out about them. Because if you don't find out about them, your plan will never be implemented. And many of these are secret. For example, the Ave south in Castilla-La Mancha will go east, west, and north, south. Do you really think there won't be a major city at the crossing of the Ave in Castilla-La Mancha? That's a secret right now. Your railroad company has a secret. I need to know that secret before I can make a plan for Castilla-La Mancha. That's called a constant. I need to know. And then there are the contingencies, the things that could happen. And it's really important to to capture the major generating assumptions and their ranges. You have to be able to say it's either here, here, or here. And the beginning ones are the most important. It's very important to do that. Because this is really what the design process is like. If you make the wrong first steps, you will end up wrong. If you make the right first steps, you still may end up wrong, but you have a better chance. The best learning tool is the Japanese game of Go. In the Japanese game Go, the first moves tell you what the territory will look like. And it's very good training for designers. The next complicating thing is the social structure, the actual social structure of making a landscape plan. Spain and much of Europe has a culture of professional expertise. The belief is that a group of people, after debates and debates and debates, will say, this is what you should do. Maybe. Other cultures have a different professional culture in which the expert's role is to tell you what not to do, but doesn't tell you what to do. These are the people who are of the place that you are studying, the local people, the phrase stakeholders. The people who live there make the decisions, some are elected, some are not. They have two absolutely essential roles, and they should not be confused with the professional role. And they have one characteristic which is extremely important. The characteristic that's important is that they do not agree with each other. If they agreed with each other, everything would be simple, we wouldn't need a plan. But they don't. And it's foolish to believe that you can talk to them for a long time and they will agree with each other. They still won't agree with each other. Because they're most often than not in a zero-sum game, in a game where one person wins at the expense of somebody else. It's not a happy family. It's a war. That's why they call in other people. However, they have ideas. The local people typically know much more than any of us about what's important, what they like, what they don't like, what they're afraid of, what they want to do, but they don't agree. They have scenarios. They have ideas. And one of the most important things in developing a landscape plan, inclusive of the cultural landscape, is to get their ideas. And you have to do it with respect and with neutrality. If you come to them with an ideological position, you already have enemies. And this is us, the research team. Call it the experts, call it the research team, call it the University of Madrid, call it whatever you like. But you're outsiders. You're outside. You don't live there. You don't marry. You don't pay taxes. You don't have cows. You're here. And your job, my job, is to organize their scenarios, their ideas, and sometimes yours, into data in a lexicon that is not your lexicon, but their lexicon, which is why you never collect data. Not first. Then organize the models you need, assess and simulate their scenarios, and present them the consequences of their ideas. Not your ideas, their ideas. Because their second responsibility is public review of the findings as a component of local debate and decision models. They make the decisions, not you. Therefore, you need a method. And what I mean by a method is a mix of about 100 methods, some of which are relevant and some of which are not relevant. There's no one method. And to focus on a methodology is foolish. A method set has to be robust. It has to capture the basic issues and not get tied up in the details. The strategy is what you need. The details, don't worry about it. Not at this scale. It has to be able to expand geographically. It has to be able to add components. It has to be easy to update the data and improve the models. It has to be easy to change. It has to be able to change land uses. Most important, change scenarios, change alternative futures, and change impacts. It's not easy. Any study of the landscape, and I define the landscape as everything, has to ask 6 questions, and these questions are fundamentally different. The first question is, how should the landscape be described? Second, how does the landscape operate? How does it work? The third is the current landscape working well? These 3 questions are asked very frequently of the past and the present. How might the landscape be changed? What predictable differences might the changes cause? And how should the landscape be changed? And these questions are typically asked at least 3 times in making a plan, in making a landscape study. The first question, how should the landscape be described? These are representation models. Representation models are abstractions. They could be maps, paintings, poems, novels, sketches, words, the things that allow us to describe a place. These are data, and they are neutral. Data are neutral. The second question, how does the landscape operate? These are process models. Processes, functions. The functions of the landscape are processes. Just like heating a building is a process. Acoustics is a process. Structures is a process. Human movement is a process. How do they work? These produce information. And information is more than data. It's purposeful data. The third question, is the landscape working well? These are evaluation models. And these are necessarily cultural knowledge. What Spain calls crowding is not what China calls crowding, is not what Arizona calls crowding. That's cultural knowledge. You have to ask. The fourth question, how might the landscape be changed? These are change models. And all these are, in reality, is changes of the representation. Repton decided that hundreds of years ago. It takes 2 drawings to represent a change, before and after. So a change model is data. What predictable differences might the changes cause? These are impact models. And these are basically the process models based on a new condition. And these are information. And finally, decision models. What should we do? And those, again, are cultural and political knowledge. The first time you ask it is very fast. We're going to go to Mexico. It has not very good data. It's a dry desert that has hurricanes. It's very nice, but it's not going to be nice very soon because it's growing too fast. It's going to change in very many ways. They're very worried about the economics of the change, as well as the ecology of the change, as well as the cultural landscape change, and they don't know what to do. And any one of us who's experienced with professional activity can usually do that in a couple of days. You talk to a bunch of people, you read a couple of guidebooks and books. It's not mysterious. It's not mysterious. You find the people to talk to. Google is a marvelous tool. So you can do this. It's not fast. But then comes something that's very special. The second time through is how you decide what your methodology is. What do the decision makers need to know? What do they need to know? Therefore, which impacts do you really need to understand? And to understand the impacts, which changes are you going to evaluate? To make a change, you had better have a very good sense of what's right and wrong or good and bad now. Why change something that's good? To understand it, you better understand how it works. For example, Spain is going to make a great effort to protect agriculture, but are the farmers really going to stay on the farm? And what happens if the EU subsidy changes? So the process of farming is really what's important, not where the farms are so much. And finally, if you understand the process, you understand what data you need. And only then should you organize your data. Because I've seen so much in my life, I've wasted so much time and money collecting data. I haven't done this for 30 years. And people are still collecting data on things nobody cares about. And they're not collecting data on the things that are terribly important, like water quality in the Harama River, that everybody should understand how bad it is. Then you organize your data. Then you understand with your experts, you figure out who the experts should be. Then you evaluate. Then you simulate change. Then you compare it. Then you decide. And some things can happen. Imagine you're a faculty member and your student says, I think this is wonderful, and you say, no, it's not. Design it again, and again, and again. Or collect more data, or get another expert, or reevaluate, or mitigate, or educate. Those are feedback mechanisms. Or change scale. And ask the same questions at a different scale, but the models change. And maybe the answer is yes, and somebody will implement something, and one of your students in the next generation will have your planned implementation as their data. And the process continues, because plans repeat every 20 years. For every study, there are overarching questions. There are no typical answers. I'm going to give you the answers for the case study in Mexico. The first is who should participate and how? Regional experts, local residents, or outsiders? The process, this case study, had to be done in 4 months because a mayor in Mexico is elected for 3 years and cannot repeat. So if a mayor doesn't know within 6 months what to do or not to do, nothing will ever get done. This is a community which has an internal war between the developers and the conservationists. And we were asked as neutral outsiders to come in to study this place by a very famous Mexican foundation, an environmental foundation, Fundea. The local residents had to be participants, and the outsiders are experts from Mexico. What is the purpose? Scientific advancement or public action? Very clearly, it's action. In this study, the aim is action. This is difficult. What's the trade-off between faster study results and action versus possibly better research and later decisions? I make no apology for the assumptions and simplifications of a 4-month study. Because if it wasn't finished in 4 months, nothing will happen. If we took 3 years and 6 million euros, nothing still might happen. Will the study product be a single effort or a continuing decision support process? This was designed as a continuing decision support process. The computing was turned over to the University of Baja California Sur, but it failed because they were not prepared to really deal with it. What is the appropriate cost? How much time, money, and basic research are needed? This study cost 250,000 euros. It was done in 4 months. No basic research was able to be done with one exception, and that is the visual model. La Paz is the capital city of Baja California Sur. It is where Hernan Cortés came and began the process of the conquest of California and the process of missions, of Catholic missions, that were the foundation of the Spanish colonization of the western United States and the western Mexico, began in La Paz. It's here, and the largest tourism development near La Paz is Cabo San Lucas. This is very important because Cabo San Lucas is very well studied. And it's about 15 years in advance of La Paz in the styles of development and the economic and social characteristics that carry with it. So the modeling from La Paz is based on the experience of the university colleagues in studying Cabo. Some of my slides are in Spanish, but I've kept the English ones mainly. The group, I'm the sort of general. So I'm an architect, an urban designer, a planner, and I'm professor of landscape architecture. Robert Farris is a real estate economist, an economist who specializes in development economics and real estate. Mike Flaxman teaches at MIT, is an expert in computer modeling and GIS. Juan Carlos Vargas Morena is a landscape architect, and Tess Canfield is a landscape architect who deals with historical landscapes and is a wonderful writer and editor. Oscar is a marine biologist. Manuel is an economist. Micheline is a sociologist. And Fausto is an expert on aerial photographic interpretation. Tom Maddock at the and that's the Universidad Autónoma Baja California Sur. Tom Maddock is one of the world's great subsurface hydrologists. And these are two of his doctoral students. And Lucio Godinez is a marine ecologist. The Fundación Mexicana para Educación Ambiental was the funder. The first question, how should the landscape be described? Satellite information, this is La Paz, this is Cabo, this is the port at which Hernan Cortez landed with his horses to capture California. The mogote protects the port. This is the city, and this is very important. This is an extremely dangerous arroyo. The city is 250,000, and in 15 years it will be 450,000. It will double in 15 years. It is a classic law of the Indies Spanish colonial city. Every time Spain did a city in the New World, they did the same thing. Just like the Romans did to Spain, Spain did to Mexico. It has a Plaza Mayor, it has a cathedral, it has a municipio, exactly the same. This is Mexico. This is Mexican Mexico, not American and Canadian and British Mexico. And this is American, Canadian, and British Mexico. Plaza Mayor, the cathedral, the beaches, the Malecon. And let me pause for a minute. Which is the cultural landscape? That's a very interesting question. If I was dealing with history, this might be the cultural landscape. But if I was dealing with reality, this is the cultural landscape. Do we really want to preserve this? 100 years from now, maybe. The data that we used are terrible in its spatial detail. They are national data because we don't have time to do anything else. So, no apology. National data are being used. I know there are national data for Spain. This could be done for all of Spain in about a year. There had never, ever, ever been a land use map of the city of La Paz. Never. 4 students and our air photo expert, in 3 weeks, made a 15-category map of the urban land use of La Paz for the first time. It was the only fundamental data that we collected. The only fundamental data. So, what are the data? Land use, terrain, vegetation, subsurface geology, subsurface hydrology, ownership, and that's all. That's all. And every country in Europe has these data. Well, how does the landscape work? This is 15 connected computer models. And I'll explain to you what we did and what we left out. First, there are economic growth trajectories, which are population by socioeconomic level. These are the people who are coming. There are 2 things coming: people and money, and water. These people who want to come have to understand the plans and policies of the place, whether they are public or private market. At the same time, there is a current land use pattern, and that pattern makes different places, different locations, attractive for different land uses. Location, location, location. These 2 together get put onto the ground as new land uses by a computer program which mimics the free market. The people who pay more get first choice. The people who pay less get lower choice. The people who have no money have no choice. It's not socialist. It's Mexico. The second thing that happens exogenously from the outside is water. And water comes to this region in 2 different ways. The first is normal rainfall. And normal rainfall creates runoff and aquifer recharge. But this is one of the most dangerous places in the world for hurricanes. It's a very, very, very dangerous place. At least 2 times a year, a hurricane comes through, and normally 3 or 4 people die each year in hurricanes because they've built in the arroyos. Very, very difficult. When the hurricanes come, there are floods. And the floods affect the land use. Very dangerous. The land uses use water. They need water. And they take it from the groundwater. If they take too much, the salt water will come in to the groundwater. From pumping, salt water will come in and poison the wells. The water which they use goes into the sewer system, but it doesn't work. And the sewage goes into the laguna, and it affects the marine ecology, especially the young replacement marine ecology. The new land uses affect recreation, they affect visual quality, and these affect the tourism industry by introducing limits to employment and income. If these are good, more people will come. If they are bad, fewer people will come. And the people who come because they believe that there are jobs. And when they come, they go through this cycle again in 5-year periods. That's how it works. That's how we think it works. Is the current landscape working well? The third question. Well, in terms of location, this is where industry would like to be. The more red, the better. That's the airport. The industry would like to be here. Commerce? Commerce wants to be near the main roads. On the main roads, here, 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 here. Tourism. Tourism wants to be where there are good sand beaches, especially here. Especially here. High-end housing, expensive housing for North Americans mainly, and now Europeans because the dollar is weak. They want to be near the hotels with the view of the sea, just like in Spain. Urban housing, social housing, and informal housing want to be in the same place, near the town, near the roads. But the informal housing gets last choice. How might the landscape be altered? Excuse me. We decided in consultation, we met monthly for 3 days with a group of people from the community, like in the example that you gave. The mayor, the assistant mayor, the planner, the bankers, the commercial people, a group, three days a month. And we decided with them that there were three most important issues. The first was, who wants to come? What are their economic and social categories, and what do they really want when they come to this place? And the second was the public policies by which we could guide the development, either conserve it or develop it. And the third was the political and financial will, power, if you wish, to implement the plan. Those are the three things. Who wants it? How can you control it? And do you have the will to control it? We decided on three different economic scenarios. The first one, the least growth, was the current tendencia, the trend. La Paz is a capital city. It has government, it has shopping, it has services. It's a small tourist industry. It's a small tourist industry. It has a university. It has more PhDs, more doctors of philosophy per capita than any city in Mexico. It's a wonderful place to live. The second one, Medio, has more people. And this is basically a scenario based on the new law of Mexico, which allows foreigners to buy land. And the assumption here is that Americans and Canadians and Englishmen and Spaniards are going to buy the land for second homes. Again, not different from Spain. The third, the most rapid growth, is a massive Mexican government program to introduce hotels and resorts. This is the Cancun model. This is the Cabo San Lucas model. It's a centrally decided thing. We're going to have this as a resort pole, as a center for resorts. And they could build 15 hotels immediately if they wanted to. So these are very different socioeconomic programs. Given the experience in Mexico, we have a pretty good idea of how many hectares of these land uses, irregular, popular, rural, urbano, residencial, industria, comercio, turismo. If you have more people, you need more hectares. And we understand by studying the cities of Mexico, there are lots of people who have done this. How many hectares is 100,000 people? So different scenarios need different amounts of land. Green is tendencia, orange is medio, and accelerado is purple. The second criteria, the public policies. Three scenarios: unrestricted, laws, and proactive. Unrestricted. Unrestricted, it's true all over the world. It says all land is developable, all land is available for development. Mexico has the same laws as America and Spain. But the truth is that all land is available for development. The second is laws. All land is available for development except areas protected by law. Well, that's why you have this emphasis on the cultural landscape of making a law. But the problem is implementing the law, not making the law. Mexico has these laws. The third is proactive. Areas protected by law and areas with high cultural, historical, visual, and/or environmental value are not available for development. These are very different. This is unrestricted, these are the laws, and these are the proactive. And there's nothing special. Nobody should build in the major arroyos. The mangroves, the manglar, are the most important law, and the ones that we proposed are protecting the arroyos, protecting the wells, the water wells. Don't build on hazardous waste. Don't build on steep slopes. Protect the alluvial soils. Protect the historical core. Protect the most important terrestrial ecology. Protect the most important views. Protect the areas for public recreation. And protect the floodplain of the hurricane. Nothing special, nothing sense, this common sense. Common sense. The Romans did the same thing. In purple is the arroyo, and in gray is the available development zone unrestricted. If we apply all of the laws, that's all of the laws in Mexico. And only the mangroves are added. And 2 years ago, Mexico removed mangroves from protection. So now nothing is protected. And these are the places that have high ecological, visual, cultural, etc. value and should not be developed. I'll talk about that shortly. And finally, public resources. High level of public financial resources, low level. Are they going to be rich or poor? If they're poor, they may be better off. So we have 18 scenarios, 18 different scenarios. 3 socio-economic, 3 public policy, and 2 political. We think that the worst is going to be rapid growth, unrestricted rapid growth, and lots of money so that they can build lots of roads and lots of sewers and spread development all over the place. That's the Madrid story. It's too much money for roads. We think that number 2 is the most sensitive to the ecology and the landscape. It's the trend growth, the slowest growth, the proactive policies, and also a high level of resources to implement, but a different implementation. And then we did the sensitivity analysis of all the combinations. What difference does it make if 2 stay and 1 changes? Because we don't know. We're not sure of the assumptions. So, these are the scenarios. This is land use in 2000. This is the growth of the city in rapid growth, unrestricted development, and high public resources. And it's a computer program that builds the city based on the market. I can't explain this now, I don't have time. So, that's now. This is number 1, which we thought would be the most damaging. This is number 2, the trend growth, proactive, high public resources. We thought this would be the best. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different plans for this place, based on what your assumptions are. And we're not sure of the assumptions. So, what difference does it make? We have 10 alternatives. We could have 100. What's the difference? Is this ideological? Should we debate it? Why not? Let's try to measure it. This is an area that floods seriously. And this is the floodplain of the hurricane of 2000, which killed 6 people. The water came from the mountains here, and this was flooded. Very, very seriously flooded. Scenario number 1 builds that much in the hurricane floodplain. Scenario number 2 also builds, but less. I'm only going to compare 1 and 2. Trust me, there are 10. This is the hydrology situation. You have water coming down, filling the aquifer. The aquifer must go to the sea. If the aquifer is taken from pipes, from wells, this aquifer shrinks and the salt water begins to come in. Saline intrusion is what it's called. You have it on your coast. We have it on our coast. This is the underground aquifer of La Paz. And every one of these is a well. These are agricultural, but these are the municipal wells. These 8 wells give the water to the city. This is the drop in the water table in scenario number 1. This is the line of salt water, and these now are salted, spoiled wells. And there's an 8-meter drop in the well field that serves the city. That's not good. This is scenario number 2. It's a 3-meter drop. It's less, but the salt water still comes in. They have a big problem if they don't control development. These are the most important places in terrestrial ecology. This is the result not of science, but of scientists, of 6 ecologists sitting down at a table with a map and in 3 hours deciding which are the most important areas. They know. Give them a map and a pencil, they'll tell you. These are the places that will get destroyed in scenario 1 and in scenario 2, because the land use has changed. This is the visual analysis. We took 60 photographs from hundreds that represent the full range, in our judgment, with our community group, of the visual scenes in the area. And we trained university students from the university, and they interviewed about 60 tourists and about 80 residents. And they asked them a set of questions. The first question is, por favor, which ones do you prefer the most? And which ones do you prefer the least, but in a normal distribution? And it takes about 15 minutes. And they put them on a table and we record it. Some of the photographs are fake. Because what we've done is we've taken in Photoshop some of the consequences of the policies and made it part of the photographs that we investigated. So about 10 of the photographs are fake. They will happen, but they aren't there now. These are the 30 most preferred photographs by everybody. Number 1, number 30. This is number 31 to 60. Garbage, 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 industry, informal housing, industry, ordinary commerce, informal housing, shopping center, social housing, I don't know what that is, gasoline, a center, social housing, strip development, social housing, then it gets better. Which is the cultural landscape? We asked the residents, which 12 pictures characterize La Paz today? And this is from 60 residents. This is number 1, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, social housing, the Malecon garbage shop, social housing, the historical, Centro Historico, garbage, the ships, social housing. In other words, it's a very low self-image. Then we asked the same residents which 12 pictures represent what you would like La Paz to be in 20 years. And it's really quite different. They still want the shopping centers. Why not? The Centro Histórico is number 2. They want the hotels. They want the Malecón. They want good roads. They want to preserve the landscape. They want the industry. They want better housing. They want to preserve the landscape. They want good streets. They want to preserve the landscape. They want to preserve the farming. Why shouldn't they? So they have a positive view toward the future, if you protect the landscape that is the cultural and ecological landscape, and the tourism industry. We asked the tourists, which 12 pictures did you expect to see in La Paz? And they expected to see landscape, Malecón, boats, shopping, historical core, nice beaches, clean streets. And then we asked them, what did you actually see? And they saw the same things that they expected, more or less, but a little more commerce, a little garbage, because they don't go where the real people live. So for the tourist, it's fine, but for the citizens, it's not fine. They want better. The darker green areas are the places from which you have the best views. Not where the places that you're seeing are, but where you are looking around. This would be a scenic hike, a scenic walk. This would be very unpleasant. That's very nice. These are the places that will be uglier in 20 years in scenario number 1, because the land use has changed. These are the places that will be uglier in scenario number 2, because the land use has changed. These are the places where the citizens and the tourists go for recreation. The Malecón, the historic core, and basically the landscape. This is where they are. The historical core and the edge. If you look at the edge, it's the beaches, the islands here, the best places. And then the mountain ranges, the high mountain. These are the places that will have their recreation value destroyed in scenario 1. There will not be a scenic drive. It'll be an ugly drive. And in scenario number 2. My colleague Rob Farris, who is a real estate economic person, on the internet sent a survey to about 200 potential buyers of land in La Paz. We're trying to find out the economic value of the visual characteristics of the area. I do my research in this field, and I have for many, many years. How much would you pay for this versus this versus this? Obviously photoshopped pictures. How much would you pay for this versus this versus this? How much would you pay for this road on the way to your house, this road on the way to your house, or this road on the way to your house? How much would you pay for this density of development, this density of development, or this density of development? And then in different combinations, in all different combinations, we put prices on them, and we said, which one would you choose? And you could choose none of them. And by the time we did the study, we have a pretty good idea of what the price of housing, the density are, and they cross. If you're the first house, it might be 5 million euros. But if you're the 1,000th house, it might be 50,000 euros. And there's a crossing point. There's a crossing point between density, value, and landscape. I'm coming to the end. If you know the cost of development, and you know how much development, and you know what type of development, you can make an estimate of the gross regional product. And it's measured in billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. And the different scenarios in the first period and the second period are different. The ones that develop more bring more money to the area. There's no question about that. They bring more money. But the per capita income is a very different story. What happens in per capita income is that in the first phase, in the blue, everybody's income rises. But what happens then is that many new people come to the area thinking there's jobs, thinking there are jobs in construction and management and tourism and business. But if the environment is not kept high, the per capita expenditure of the tourists goes down. It becomes mass market tourism. And all of a sudden you have many more people and much lower income. And so the failures here, the lower per capita income, is for those scenarios which did not protect the environment. So what should happen? Sixth question, how should the landscape be changed? The governor, we made a presentation to hundreds of people. The governor of the province made a speech. He said, I'm running for re-election. I consider the economy and the environment to be equal. Rhetoric, totally untrue. But what if it's true? So we made, first of all, a economic performance index. We took, for each scenario, the gross regional product and the per capita income, and we made an index. And we put each scenario on this index in a spreadsheet. And then we made an environmental quality index. What was the impact, environmental, of each scenario? And we put those on this index. And if they're equal, they should be here. And scenario number 10 is the scenario that has the equal balance between the best ecology and environment and the best income. But scenario number 9 has much more money, but much lower quality. And scenario number 2 has much higher quality, but much lower money. So if you want to be ideological and protect your environment, you need to know that you're reducing the economic potential of that area and the per capita income. That's not a simple political calculus. Now, the truth of making a wise decision is somewhere in here, somewhere in this triangle. It can't be higher than that in economics. It can't be better than that in environment. And it's somewhere here. I don't know where it is. But it's not this, not this, not this, not this, not this, not this, and not this. And the advice we gave the mayor is, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to tell you what to do. You have to decide what to do. But we will tell you what not to do. Don't do this, 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 or this. We also gave one other advice, and this is number 10. This is the best plan. We also gave him one other advice. We said, we're not sure whether the market will build housing, commerce, or industry in any particular small place. We don't know. It's not normative planning. It's a market constraint. But this is the attractiveness for all of them, for commerce, industry, and housing. And I can tell you that it's going to be developed here before it's here and before it's here. I don't know what it is, but it's going to happen. And this is the map that combines visual, recreational, and ecological. You might call this dark area the cultural, visual, ecological, protected landscape. And the interesting thing is when you put those two maps together, instinctively, the people who protect the landscape, who defend the landscape, want to protect all of this. They want to protect everything that's important. Very sensible, I agree. But the fact of the matter is the developers don't necessarily want it. If it's red, it means it's highly attractive for development, but not for conservation. If it's green, it means it's highly attractive for conservation, but not for development. So it's de facto, not de jure conservation. The real question is if it's brown. If it's brown, it means the developers want it and the conservationists want it. And that's where the war should be. The real fight in a landscape plan, in a cultural landscape plan, is not to protect it all, but to protect it where it's threatened. And to figure that out. And to figure that out, you can't just look at the landscape. You have to look at the market. It turns out that the most threatened piece is here. In 1950s, President Alemán, Miguel Alemán, the president of Mexico, stole this land from the public land and made it private property, his private property. His grandson owns this land. A very famous architect has proposed a $1 billion development on this land. We made this presentation, and there were a couple of thousand people who signed a petition, and the mayor decided to claim this land as the first municipal park on the Sea of Cortez. And he has the right to do this in Mexican law. And he decided to protect 4,000 hectares of this land. Last month, the Supreme Court of Mexico had to decide whether this should be a public park or a private $1 billion development. I don't know what they decided because they haven't published their decision. But if they decide that this should be a public park, in my career, this is probably the most interesting triumph of 40 years of making landscape plans. In 4 months, with no new data, with a pretty clear idea of what we needed to do, and we didn't need a lot of discussion, we didn't need a lot of expertise. What we needed is a clear set of policies based on a clear methodology and a clear level of presentation. Thank you.